without further ado, it's time to introduce Saul and his guest Melissa. So Saul Neelman is a successful bench player turned professional sports photographer, hailing from the wonderfully weird Portland suburb of Hillsborough. After squeaking by with a journalism degree at the University of Oregon, go Ducks, Neelman launched his photography career in 1996 with a humanitarian agency based in Surreal. The following year, Neelman returned to Oregon and landed a newspaper gig in McMinnville with the News Register. And in 2000, he split to photograph for Beaver State's largest paper, the Oregonian. Right before existing for a freelance career in 2007, he was part of a team at the O that won a Pulitzer Prize for breaking news reporting. Since then, Neelman has traveled the world, chronicling some of the weirdest sports on Earth. In that time, he has cheated death on a 60-foot board cliff, been knocked unconscious by a bronco at a prison rodeo, and tumbled off a ski lift overloaded with furries. Oh, and he also covered the Olympics once or twice. Neelman's work has graced the pages of pretty much every publication worth reading, from the National Geographic to ESPN to the New York Times to Penthouse, long story. Advertising clients including one or two companies you might know of, including Nike, Adidas, and Cliff Bar. He also has published 3 books on weird sports with the world-renowned fine art book publisher Care Verlag.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And also we have with us today, zooming in, Melissa Lyttle. Thanks, Melissa, for being here. Melissa Lyttle is an independent visual journalist and passionate leader in the photo community. She proudly earned a photojournalism degree from the University of Florida, go Gators, and began her career as a staff newspaper journalist in her home state of Florida, where she worked for nearly 15 years. She also ran a popular blog called A Photo a Day, which connected and inspired like-minded photojournalists from across the country. And that's how her and Saul got to know each other for more than 20 years ago. She now freelances for editorial and commercial clients who appreciate a strong visual narrative. Her work has been supported by the W. Eugene Smith Memorial Fund grant and the Allen Hagman grant, the Pulitzer Center for Reporting grant, and honored by UNICEF, Hoyin, and NPPA Best Photo. Oh, there's a whole other page. Wow, impressive list.
She's an impressive woman.
Photojournalism, the Atlanta Photojournalism Seminar, Southern Short Course, the Casey Medals for Meritorious Journalism, and the Alexia Foundation Student Grant, to name just a few. For her professional accomplishments, she's also a cutthroat backgammon player. I love that. So consider yourself warned. I take that as a challenge, Melissa. Wonder if we can do that virtually.
Anytime.
Melissa currently lives in D.C. with her wife Anna and their 1-year-old son and a scruffy terrier named Scout. I hope we get to see Scout. We love animal pop-ups at the photo bombs. Yeah, we appreciate it. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks for showing up. It's great to see so many great faces here. Some who missed the opening on Thursday night, but I'm not going to make them feel bad about that. No, I'm just kidding. Great to see you. I'm nervous, so that's what I do, is I just make jokes.
Well, why don't we answer some questions? I'm just going to jump in since I've had the wonderful honor of knowing you for 20 years, of hearing you speak numerous times, of seeing your work progress. And one of the things I was looking for on my hard drive was I have Saul Neelman version 1.0, junior high, black and white scans, portfolio somewhere living in my hard drive. So I know that you got your start way back in Hillsborough, way back in junior high. Can you kind of talk about your origin story? Was it just like the cool class to take that kind of got you out of some other stuff, or like, what was the thought early on?
Jason Thorson was a cool kid, and I wanted to be friends with him. And he took a photo class, and I think he got into photography because he liked to look at fine art nudes in the library, and he was able to justify it that way because he was doing research. And yeah, so I joined, I wanted to do a photo class, and it wasn't available, but yearbook was. And the yearbook instructor, Gary Seahorn, he did yearbook and photo. So the next year I did photo, and the yearbook just kind of, it was my people. You know, it was kind of introverts, a little artistic, maybe a little autistic, you know, just a little looking for our community. We weren't necessarily cool, but we weren't not cool. And doing the yearbooks were like, gave me all the purpose. I don't remember anything else in school other than working on yearbook. So
then fast forward, you graduate high school and you're thinking about what you want to do when you grow up. You know, how did you transition to like, oh, I want a career in journalism? Like, how did photography translate to that for you?
Well, I remember taking a career placement test at Glencoe, and it said that I should be a farmer. Which I think is what they do for all people in Hillsborough, especially back in the 80s when it was farmland. And I kind of had, I think this has been one of, you know, my benefits and struggles is that I've always been able to whittle things that I don't want to do. And so it all whittled down to I don't want to do anything, but photography seems cool. And that's kind of how I started pursuing that a little bit. I went to Oregon. Oregon didn't really have, at the time, now it has a great photo program, but at the time it didn't. And so I was kind of joining the newspaper and trying to make some photos, didn't know what I was doing, but I kind of liked that vibe and that kind of get out of school, get access, being an introvert. I'm a loud introvert now, but I used to be a quiet introvert. And I know you don't believe it, Tim, but it's totally true. And I think for a lot of photographers, you know, it's a chance to, you know, hide behind the camera. I had my picture taken by Ken earlier today, and I'm like, you know, it's a lot easier being behind the camera than in front. And it gave me an excuse to talk with people and get access and see things and experience things that I normally wouldn't have if I, you know, worked at Washington Square.
So then you working at McMinnville, you go over to the O, you're kind of a GA photographer, I assume, early on. And I know we all kind of have these peaks and valleys in our career, and early on you're sort of climbing exponentially, and inevitably you plateau. And usually for me anyway, and for most people I know, that's between 5 and 10 years in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you kind of hit this little plateau. How did you get off of that plateau? And I know, and I can sort of preface this by saying, you know, I know that you were having conversations with friends at that point in time, trying to help you figure out what it was you loved and what direction you wanted to go. Can you kind of set the stage for that a little bit? Because I think that's like the crux of you and of Weird Sports.
Well, this is where I'm going to cry because this involves you. But you know, I actually have a very, I like to think that he says he has a famous cousin, but I have a famous cousin, Jonas Bendixson, who's a Magnum photographer. And I had a conversation with his wife, and I was 34 at the time, and I just found out that we were related, and I was really kind of curious about his program, but he was busy in India for National Geographic, but Laura was available, and I spoke with her. And she's like, what do you love to do? And it was sports, travel, photography, and weird shit. And that's when the light went off. And up until that point, I was looking, you know, as newspaper photographers, we're always looking for the great assignment. Like, give me something really cool. And that was kind of the first time where it's like, oh, I'm going to go find things that are really cool that, you know, I'm going to be my assignment editor. And that was really hard to do. And then in 2005, you know, Melissa is very humble, but she's huge.
Don't
got-
cry. Too late.
She touches a lot of lives, and she inspires people to follow their heart. And we had this blog. She started this blog called A Photo a Day, and it connected newspaper photographers from all over. I was in McMinnville, like I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know anyone at the Oregonian. I knew nobody, but I was a part of this blog, and we would share photos and get feedback. And Matt Eich was he was always featured on there. It was like, oh my God, another Matt Eich killer photo. And
Matt Eich was like 17 at the time, so.
yeah, totally. Some people, I did not come out of the womb with a camera, Matt Eich did, but he's a beautiful photographer. We all found our people, and in 2005, we chose Austin. I don't even know how we chose Austin.
Cool city, good people,
Yeah.
full of local photographers we could pull from to speak at our little conference.
That's right. And so there was about 35 of us, and we crashed at a Days Inn off of I-35, and just bonded, had fun, took pictures,
And
shared
we only
photos.
shot for ourselves.
What's that, Em?
I was saying, and we went out and we made pictures for ourselves that weekend. That was one of the years when we started doing that, kind of incorporating it into the weekend. Was we had little themes, and we had groups that we would go out with and try to make pictures with. And I, like, one of my earliest memories of you is you coming back being stoked that you went out and made pictures for yourself. And nobody had assigned you, and you were stoked on those pictures. And so then you returned home to Oregon, right? Yeah. And what do you do with all of that energy and that inspiration? Like, where did that take you from that weekend, that conversation with Laura preceding it, Beach Fest, and then going home?
We went to photograph a biker rally in Austin, which was ridiculous, but it was the same night as roller derby, and this was 2005, and I didn't even know roller derby was still a thing. And I really wanted to photograph it. I heard that Austin had 2 leagues. I think Chicago or New York had 1 league, and Seattle had a league. And so I'm like, well, I'll go home and I'll go up and photograph derby in Seattle. And just had a great time. And then it's like, I want to do this again. And then that led to, like, there was a cow shit throwing contest in Oklahoma that I went to photograph, and then I photographed underwater hockey in England, and then, it just spiraled really quickly, because I wanted more. I just wanted more of that experience, and so.
What was it that experience gave you that you wanted more of? Joy.
I laughed a lot. I made photos that I cared about. I photographed people having fun. And one of the things that I got, I don't mean to necessarily do this, but so that mud pit belly flop photo in the center the bottom center there, that was a great day, not because I made that photo, but because we had a car full of people. Chip, Bob, Crosland, Rob Mattson, Tamika was there, a bunch of other photographers, and we just had a great fucking time just taking pictures. We just laughed and we took pictures. And then we drank and we laughed, and thankfully no pictures of that part, but it was, and that kind of became my, my program of like, oh, I'm going to go crash on someone's couch, drag them to the event, we're gonna take pictures and go grab a beer. And I did that for a long time.
So friends, fun, photos. And that was the start of it all. I remember early on trying to tip you off to things, and you were like, oh yeah, it's on my list. And you had a list that was like hundreds, if not more, long. How many weird sports do you think you've photographed total?
I think about 250.
Possible to quantify? 250?
Yeah, I think it's about 250. My list grew to about 1,000. So, yeah.
Do you have criteria for what makes it a weird sport?
I need to make a good picture of it. Like that's a large part. It needs to be something that's kind of sporty. You know, technically, like Japanese would not call log riding a weird sport. There's that log riding photo behind me, and but they're riding a log. People ride other vehicles. It seems, you know, if I can. Because I was able to create the definition, it was whatever I wanted it to be, and a large part of it was fun, and had some twist of sports, like Pig and Ford racing in Tillamook. It's racing cars, you know, Model Ts, but with a pig under your arm. You know, it's just a little bit of a twist. You know, there's ostrich racing. I mean, you know, there's a lot of racing photos. You know, snowboarding.
Jeep racing.
Yeah, that's right. Which you and I did, which was like an amazing weekend of going to Northwest Arkansas and just laughing our asses off. And that's where I took the photo of the dude stuck in the mud with the son trying to help him out, and he's getting so much shit from his friends that he flips them off. And Em and I are both there for that, and we're just laughing, taking photos. And you know, for someone who didn't really, I've never felt like I've had a great sense, a great memory, having these moments cemented just really amplifies it more, because I remember the photos. I don't always remember little, you know, details about life, but I remember most of my photos.
Well, let's talk about making those pictures. Can you talk a little bit about how newspapers and sort of your newspaper career provided a foundation for sort of this work specifically, your big opus project?
Well, I was lucky enough I was based in Eugene, so I photographed Pac-10. I'm dating myself now. There's not even a Pac-12 anymore, but you know, Pac-10. I photographed Pac-10 sports, and I love that. I love the access, and I love being at the big game and the excitement and all that, and it helped fine-tune my photography. You know, I also photographed like some really serious things, and I think about how many times, you know, Tim, you know, we did the same thing, knocking on doors of people on their worst day. Can we make a picture? It's like, sorry. I just don't want that anymore. Like, I wanted to have fun. And so, you know, working at the paper was great because I expanded my community, and you're part of that. Everyone wanted my job at the Oregonian, so a lot of people befriended me. And I befriended others. And it's, I didn't think I was going to cry this much. You knew. But yeah, the skill set, the community. I started working with Mike Davis, a picture editor who is very unassuming and very quiet, and is extremely skilled. Everywhere he went, he made those around him better, and exponentially, and I was part of that too. So having all that skill set, and also kind of getting burned out a little bit. It's like, oh, I've done this. I've done all the big football games, and you know, in Oregon it was a big deal for me because it wasn't just my alma mater, but it was like the high school events. I knew the history, that was important. But at a certain point, it's like, I've done this already. I've done Amity-Dayton. That's a big game. I get it, but you know, it's like I'm ready for something else.
So you eventually transition to go freelance, leave the O behind, yeah. You kept going on this. You know, we're what, 20 years in the making now. Can you talk a little bit about just how personal projects have fueled you over the years, and sort of what that's done for your own work, and for the freelance work that you've done?
Well, well, it filled a lot of the time, and it gave me a lot of purpose to be a photographer. You know, being a freelancer, as you know, is hard, and it's frustrating and it's demoralizing. But if you can fill the time between assignments, it gives you more of like, well, this is why I'm a photographer. And it also builds work. I get to share it with other clients or friends and have new content to share. I would like to think I was the only one emailing, editors at National Geographic or Sports Illustrated with weird sports events, So that was, that helped a lot. And it kept me going. And I think that's actually part of what's been a little struggle since the pandemic. It was like, having that routine kind of clipped, where it's not that travel and taking pictures all the time and just, and rinse and repeat and keep doing that. But yeah, doing the weird sport just gave me a lot of purpose. It allowed me to reconnect with people, like my cousin Fred here. I would crash with him and the family in Evanston, and borrow the Jaguar to, go photograph Pig and Fords or Lumberjack Festival. And I missed that car. That was fun to drive. Yeah, it gave me it gave me purpose is what it did. And I didn't really think I'd be this point where I had a gallery show or books or any of that. It was really just kind of like, it gave me something to do.
How did the idea for book one come about? Like, when did you, oh, sorry, my light just turned.
You still look great, Em.
When did you sort of conceive, like, okay, I've got something, I've got enough for something bigger? How did the idea come about that you wanted to see this in print?
Well, I think for all of us, and Em, you can show off your book collection if you want. Like, how many books do you have?
Helpful.
For newspaper photographers, it was always kind of the goal of like, produce a book and have some level of legacy and so I never really thought I was going to get to that point, but I wanted that. And I was just talking with Chris about this, that in 2010, it was right after a Geek Fest, after giving a talk at our annual event, and it was in Florida, and I went off to Frankfurt to the book fair there, which is the world's largest book fair. It's like 8 airplane hangars worth of books. 2 halls, or 1.5 are devoted to photo books. And I literally just kind of wandered the halls with a notepad and a dummy book that Mike Davis had worked up. It was called Sporting. And just wandered. It's like, do you do photo books? And they're like, yes, of nudes and celebrities and dead photographers. And I'm like, I got sports. And they're like, next. So, and then I met Alexa Becker, and Alexa was the acquisitions editor, the gatekeeper at Kara Verlag in Heidelberg. And I met her. I had an appointment, and this event's not really for that. It's not set up to be like a networking thing for photographers to get a book deal, but everyone was there, so I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go and see what happens. And I met Alexa, and she asked, what do you photograph? And I said, sports, culture, but I also do weird sports. And she's like what? And I'm like, big wheel racing or wife carrying or, normal things like that. And she's like, I know your work. And I'm like, no, you haven't. Like, no one's seen my work. And she's like, didn't your dad die when you were a kid? And I'm like, how do you know this? And she was a reviewer on critical mass. Earlier that year, I'd entered because Matt Eich told me to do it, because I told Matt I wanted a book, and Matt's like, do critical mass, maybe you win. But I won. I didn't get to the top 50, but I won because Alexa remembered my work, and she's the type of person, we were just talking about this, Chris, before we started, like, she's the type of person who remembers the mission statement, maybe even more than the work. It's like why people do it. And so I showed her the work, and she's like, well, I think we should do one or the other. Should we do like, traditional sports or weird sports? And I'm like, is that a question? Like, we're gonna do weird sports. And she's like, all right, well, message me, hit me up after the fair. I'm gonna be slammed for the next 2 weeks, but I'll send you a letter of intent. I had no idea what that was. I messaged a buddy, and it's like, you got a date, man, you got a date. And I went and had a Hefeweizen, and it was like 10 a.m., and I felt like I had accomplished something. So, yeah, it was a lot of happenstance, but a lot of like people like Aich just trying to like, you know, looking back, it all made sense, even though at the time it's like, how did I get here?
So how did you get there? How did you fund the images? How did you fund the trips? I mean, I know it's been a long road, so, and I know it's something like 2 of the 68 images in book 1 were published before the book was.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so like, people weren't seeing this work. It was very much a personal project at this point. What drove you to keep doing it, and how did you actually fund the project?
Well, it started with getting money from doing jobs at Nike and then eventually Adidas and things like that. Where it's like doing a big commercial job where they overpay you to take sports photos. And then it's like, all right, cool, I can pay my mortgage and go travel and go take pictures. And thankfully, as you know, with digital cameras, you know, you just need hard drives. That's all you need. You just keep taking photos. Whereas back in the day with film, I could never afford to do this. You know, M knows this, but you know, Cartier-Bresson is known as the decisive moment. I'm the decisive motor drive. I spray, I mean with intention, but I pray as well, and pluck photos that I like, you know, that I feel will work. And so I use that money to fund everything, and then sometimes I would license work, and then when the book came out, then I would license work from that for online galleries and publications and things like that. And it was never a lot, but basically, you know, the commercial jobs were kind of the money infusions. Crashing on friends' couches meant that I didn't have as much overhead. And I fly Southwest. I love Southwest. Southwest, I love you. And so, like, that was a big deal. You know, that was something that was really made it affordable. And then, honestly, and hopefully, and I don't think I'm going to say anything wrong, but I hope the IRS isn't watching. Like, I write off pretty much everything. You know, like, I don't get out of bed unless I can write it off. And that, so working as like a net low, hopefully not a net negative, but like a net low, it's like, it somehow makes it affordable because, you know, my parking here, this is work, you know, and it's, wherever I go, I'm taking pictures, you know, and so that's, hasn't really helped with my retirement fund, but it did make it, you know, doable to do this. Because I don't really operate with a high budget, and I know when TV, I've had over 20 different TV producers reach out about doing a weird sports show, and it's all fizzled for different reasons. Some of it's money, and I'm like, you know, if I can go do this, you can send 3 people and we'll go, you know, do some footage and interviews and produce something. Like, it didn't need to be something big and grand. You know, it's not like a Nike shoot where it's, you have assistants and assistants have assistants and their assistants have assistants, and, you know, so.
So if there were photographers out there in your audience, would you have any advice for them, for those who are trying to carve out their own niche in photography, find their voice and work on personal stuff?
Well, I think the short of it is like, don't listen to people who say no. You know? Just find your people that support you, that have a good couch to crash on, you know, grab a beer with. You know, I think one of the struggles is, you know, we don't think our voices matter. And a lot of times, you know, like, I always wanted to be in National Geographic and have a regular, you know, big spread on weird sports there. And they're like, well, we're not a sports magazine. I'm like, it's just a culture magazine, you know. And, you know, when I got to the point where I stopped asking people permission, I just went. And that made all the difference, because I wasn't looking for someone to say, you know, your idea is good. It was up to me to do that. So. And I think some of the best work that almost all the great work that I see is when people lean into stuff that they care about. And it could be, people friends I know that photograph their kids and have like the most amazing kid photos, or, pet photos even, or whatever they care about the most. Really lends itself for great photos because you want to be there. I want to be here at these events, like if this was not, people were, this was never work. Finding jobs to pay for work, that was work. But this was never work. So, yeah, I think the main thing is just kind of trust yourself that what you care about matters enough.
Yeah, I really hope some of the gatekeepers of the industry are watching this, because I don't think they realize how damning and demeaning their words are sometimes, and just being green pressures. And I, for one, am really, really glad that you didn't listen to them.
Thanks. Well, I listened to you, though, because I had people like you who were like, go do that. Or dog surfing's happening in California, go do that. Like, you came up with a lot of, it's the inspiration of the community you created. It's a large reason. I knew I was going to make myself cry. I don't know if you made me cry, but I knew I was going to cry talking with you. But like, the role that you've had, more people need to know you. They need to know people like you who are always saying yes and,
Well, let's sort of fast forward to where you are now. You've got 3 amazing books. You've got pictures on the wall, like amazing gallery in Portland. Looking back, like, what have you learned about yourself in the last 20 years that you maybe didn't know in the beginning of your path when you were starting out?
Honestly, I didn't know if I'd be a good photographer, I definitely have a lot more confidence, and taking on a project like this, because it is so lonely, and also the reason why I always bring people along, it's like I want to have fun with people, and I want them to enjoy it as well too. Doing all this largely on my own, it's empowering, and for someone who is shy and an awkward teenager, awkward adults, awkward middle-aged man, it gave me a lot of confidence to know that I could do something. And it was fun when I published my first book. I went up to Klaus Kehrer and I'm like, Klaus, I'm coming back. And he's like, yeah, keep them coming. Just make sure it's weird sports. Don't do any of this other stuff. And produce. What's that?
Tickle my throat, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. But yeah, it was, largely it was just, I never thought I would get to a point where I would have, people sitting, me crying, to be recorded for posterity. And also to realize how important my community is and how they've really shaped me and how lucky I am, There are a lot of things about the industry that I have a lot of problems with. I think you and I are on the same page in a lot of ways. But when you break it down to the community of great people that are out there, it makes me a happier person. It makes me a stronger person and photographer. And I feel, I think I used this word at the book launch. I feel really blessed,
Well, I think one thing I've learned from you over the years is that there's no like one path, like I think when a lot of us got into newspapers back in the 90s and early aughts, it was very formulaic. There was, there was a path, small, medium, large newspaper sizes, intern at the right places to get the right, right jobs after that. And I think we probably both owe some diverging from the path to the success of our careers. Can you talk about just sort of your formula for success? What makes What makes a Saul Neelman photo successful? What makes a shoot successful?
Well, if I'm laughing taking the photo, I know that I've done something, because I get bored really easily, and so a lot of times during the edit, I'm like, oh, I remember smiling when I took this photo. And you know, a large part too is getting, you know, one of the things I loved about the books is that watching people go through the books, I can see how they're experiencing the photos, and I can see what works and what doesn't, and that's a gift. Not that it's I'm right or wrong or vice versa, but like, you know, it's helped me to see, like especially with this gallery, like I have several hundred selects and tens of thousands of images to choose from, and my only criteria for the show was I just want people to smile at them. You know, like what's the most likely photo where someone will be like, what the fuck am I looking at? And I'm gonna laugh or want to laugh. And so, you know, I also think, you know, we talked about this, you were talking about the formula of newspaper careers and things like that. There was also a lot of rules, and it's one of the things that maybe I needed as a newspaper photographer to like have that structure, but I think, you know, I envy fine art photographers. I don't know about Dylan, whose work is in the back. I don't think Dylan is a editorial photographer, or their background is editorial. There's a lot of bad rules that are encouraged, you know, like don't be center, you know, tilted horizons, or, you know, layers, or there's a telephone.
Players in a ball.
What's that?
Two players in a ball.
That's right. I mean,
I was right.
There's the picture of the ostrich racing. There's a telephone pole that's popping out of one of the ostrich heads. Like, there's no way that would run in a newspaper. They'd be like, it looks like the ostrich has a telephone pole sticking out. It's like, but you know, that's not what it is. So there's a lot of bad rules, and I think what's liberating when you photograph for yourself is that you kind of back away from that. I mean, yeah.
Well, what's next for you, buddy?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, this kind of feels, I mean, it's not the end of Weird Sports, but I feel like I've kind of, maybe it's through my system for now. I don't know. I do miss doing the road trips and meeting up with friends, and maybe that's what I need to spend more time focusing in on is doing more of that. But, you know, one of the things that I love about opportunities like this is like I have no idea what this could lead to, you know, and so I always try to say yes to everything, and I'm just thankful. It was really fun on opening night, seeing people wandering the space and just laughing and going, what the fuck? And, you know, I was really happy with that accomplishment. And I don't know what's next, to be honest, but I hope it's fun.
I'm sure it will be if you're involved. Yeah. Well, do you have any advice for like your 18-year-old self? You know, kind of looking back, is there something that you would like to tell young Saul?
It was a good call not being a farmer.
I can't even imagine.
No. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you made the right call, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it allowed me to be, you know, friends with awesome people like you. So that's really the gift. I don't know if this is the point to open it up to questions, but if you guys have questions, I'll take out my reader so I can see you. Anyone got any questions? Yeah, Chris.
Well, it's not so much a question, but I just wanted to kind of underline when you were talking about that your art making has really been a sort of a team sport. You know, that it's about putting together a group of people who believe in what you're doing, who encourage you to do it, and who you're encouraging them, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you mentioned Matt, obviously. You have a teammate here on the stage with you.
Yeah.
And Alexa, and I mean, I really understood why, I mean, you're saying Alexa maybe remembers the passion behind why you're doing the work more than the work even. because the passion behind it is the thing that tells you that this is really going to be powerful and important. And so I think she's kind of going directly into like, where do I find somebody whose work comes from a deep place and is therefore going to be important?
Yeah.
I just wanted to underline that.
No, I appreciate that.
Team sports for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, I've often done a bad job of focusing on the negatives of the places that have turned me down, but when I think of all the people that have lifted me up, it's crazy. So, Michelle, did you have a question?
Yes, the obvious one.
Michelle Knowles.
Can you tell us your favorite? Do you have a favorite and why?
Oh, well, I mean, I have a favorite weird sport, which is the standard answer. It's live monster wrestling. It's a photo with a burger bear wrestling. I don't even know the character he knocked down. Yeah, the cover of my third book, which is available for sale. I'll be signing copies later. That's not set up, by the way. It really isn't. But the reason why it's on the cover is because I love that event, and I always laugh, and it's literally like, what the fuck am I seeing right now? And I don't often, someone asks me either today or on Thursday if I go back to a lot of events, and I really don't, because I've already seen it. You know, it's like the cat's out of the bag, the surprise has been revealed. And are there better pictures to be made? Absolutely. Are there better pictures to be made by others? Absolutely. I just want to do something different, and I get bored easily, and that's why I've photographed over 200. It's kind of that addict search of a new high of like, what else is there? What else can I do? So, but you know, when I look at the photos, I think of the people that were with me for the event and the experiences behind them, because there's not a boring story with any of these, you know, and so that's been a gift. Yeah.
I'm really struck by the one who's on top of that, the boxers.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's chess boxing. You do a round of chess, a round of boxing, a round of chess, a round of boxing, round of chess, round of boxing until you are knocked out or knighted. Yeah, totally. Knighted, checkmate, yeah. They do that in it's England and Germany. That's in Berlin. It's the thing is, and the creator of chess boxing was very friendly and you know, gave me great access. But he's like, you know, this is not a weird sport. We all have our definitions of weird sports, so. Yes, sir.
Yeah, two things. One is that from the way that you describe how you work and the sense of being an outsider, but also breaking the rules a little bit, is that all of these are the same, represent the same thing. These are games that are made up. They have rules or they don't. Or
Yep. 5
rules yesterday and 10 rules tomorrow.
That's right.
But it seemed that your sense of breaking the rules is embodied in all of these pictures.
Thank you.
And I think that's what I've been trying to find the word about elevating, and I think that's a little misleading about elevating to a gallery wall. But I do think that that's what makes them alive here, is that you have that the size of them is much bigger than a usual photo, sports photo image. And I just think it rises to a level that is larger than just taking a picture of someone doing his or her sport. I just think that that's the elevation. It isn't just something you can put on your wall to capture form.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I was wondering, how does this affect you, seeing them at this size in a way that I kind of gather you haven't seen them in this size before? And
Yeah, that's a good guess. Yeah.
what does it mean? Because I know I was blown away when I came in here Thursday.
Yay.
The size of it, just the fact it was smaller, I don't think I would have been affected in the same way.
Yeah, I need to print a larger book, that's for certain.
And then the other question I have is, do you take other pictures when you're on these adventures of yours? Do you take pictures other than word sports pictures? Do you have a little part of you that likes to take pictures, generically sort of called art pictures, or more personal expressions?
I mean, honestly, I'm a one-trick pony and you're looking at my trick. So, I've always loved sports photography so much, and I've always been very frustrated with the restrictions, like you were talking about with the rules. There's so many rules with sports photos, and I never appreciated them. And even with the content, I mean, I remember I had it doesn't matter because they no longer exist, but Sports Illustrated, I had a portfolio review with them, and I showed my portfolio to them, and the director of graphics, the top guy in the department, he looked at my portfolio and he's like, "This is the funniest portfolio I've seen in years." And I'm like, "Thank you. I've sent you every one of them and you've never published a single one." And so, it's like humor is a challenge because there's a lot of people like to use the P word. It's poignant, and that's all fine, but like, if you look at traditionally in sports photos, like there's not fun. There could be happy accidents, someone's tripped or, something like that, but there's the idea that you can actually have fun. So like, really, I don't, and sometimes I get pigeonholed with clients who are like, "Well, we don't do weird sports, at Nike." And I'm just like, do you have fun at Nike? Do you have, do you want people having fun and joy? And I'm not trying to single them out specifically if they want to hire me and someone's here from Nike. But like, there are opportunities to actually to celebrate joy, and it doesn't need to be just a cool looking person, being really dynamic. These are all accessible. No one here is a professional athlete, and including the photographer. So like, there's a lot of potential. So for me, this has actually it's never been about the sports. It's always been about the moments, the connections, community, the surreal aspects, and the joy.
We're saying is that in traditional sport, there's an outcome.
Yeah.
It's all about the outcome, who wins and who loses and who gets the gold and all of that. And in these, it's like these are purposefully not outcome-producing sports. These are involvement sports. These are as you said, this is having fun sports.
Well, and one of the things that's happened with the TV producers that have reached out about doing a show is, well, we're going to have the Gronk do weird sports, and he's going to try to win and take medals and stuff like that. And it's like, the big wheel racing, there's no medals. It's a bunch of adults going up to the top of the hill, riding down, crashing, laughing, hiking back up, and doing it again. There's no medal ceremony at that. I'm trying to think of any of this stuff. There's very few things, and if it is a medal ceremony, it's a goofy thing, and it's a badge of honor. It's maybe it's nothing that it's a participation trophy at best.
Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
I was curious to see, you went to some events along the way that were hard to shoot with others, and what about that time you got knocked out?
Well, were there pictures? I mean, I have tens of thousands of photos that are not on the walls right now because I did not get a large enough grant from RAC, who, thank you, RAC, for funding this. No, there are things that are really hard, and it's part of what's narrowed down some of the things that I photograph because it's funny. It could be a funny thing. One of the surprising things about some of the events I photographed to me is like wheelchairs or anyone who's sitting, horses, car racing, anywhere where people aren't moving, it's hard for me to capture because it feels more like it's evidence of somebody sitting, you watch it and it's like, holy cow, can you believe this is happening? Like, I think the reason why the pig and Ford photos work is because you can actually see the faces. It's not in a car, and there's a pig there who's crapping on the driver. So like, that makes it, to me, an interesting car photo. But if you have a regular car photo, that's more challenging to do. So there are some things about that. As far as getting knocked unconscious, I was really lucky that this happened before iPhones had video, because I would be on YouTube, hands down. Long story short was I was photographing a rodeo in a prison in Oklahoma, and there was a loose bronco, and you know, you get access, you're all excited. I'm on the grounds of the rodeo in a prison, and I'm getting ready for the next chute to open up, and I turn around and I see two horses coming right at me, one with a rider and the other one without one, and I'm like, this is not good. And the next time it happens, I'm sitting underneath the bleachers in a chair saying, all right, so it's a Friday night, I'm in Oklahoma, I'm inside of a prison, I just got knocked unconscious by a horse. And I actually had to beg to get examined by EMTs, and they gave me the quiz. This was in 2008, 9, and they gave me a quiz, and they asked me, because they just like dust off, like, you know, you're fine. And I'd never been concussed, and so I didn't know what had even happened. And I was alone when I woke up, too. And yeah, they just put me in a chair underneath the bleachers. The inmates were right above me, though. They actually checked in on me the next day. They're like, are you okay? And I actually had someone who I sat down the next day. It was a 2-day event. I stayed in the bleachers for that one. And I sat down, and someone's like, you're that photographer that got hit by that? That looked like that hurt. I will tell you, never worry about being knocked unconscious or run down by a car or anything. You will not remember it. You will not. So I have no painful memories. I just remember that moment of, and that's it. Yeah, so I survived. And yeah, thankfully there was no videos of that.